Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my wife keeps throwing away perfectly good leftovers and I'm sick of it. I, 33 male, started a fight with my wife, who's 30, over her habit of wasting food. We come from very different backgrounds when it comes to food. Her family had the financial means to go out to eat frequently, often cooking large meals that could feed an army. In their household, the rule was that whoever got to the leftovers first could have them. On the other hand, my family was more frugal, only dining out on special occasions and cooking just enough for 1 or 2 meals. Takeout was never shared, and if we had leftovers, they were distributed equally. The disparity in our upbringings has caused significant disagreements in our marriage. My wife is the primary cook, and she tends to order takeout frequently because we both have demanding jobs. Throughout our 10-year relationship, she has learned to cook smaller portions to prevent food from spoiling. She doesn't really enjoy eating leftovers, as the smell of cold food often makes her feel sick. As a result, she tries to meal prep or cook just enough for 2 meals at most, knowing that wasting food bothers me. Whenever we have leftovers, I always inform her when her portion is still in the fridge. Usually she tells me to just help myself if I want more. She has previously mentioned that if she genuinely plans to eat it later, she would write her name on the container or tell me not to eat it. However, to the best of my recollection, she has never done that. I always tell her that the leftovers are hers, so she can have them, and we go back and forth like this for several rounds. The other night, we had leftover Chinese takeout, her portion as I had finished mine. When she asked me what I wanted her to cook for dinner, I reminded her about her leftovers. She casually replied, "Oh yeah? Hand it here." Surprisingly, she emptied the entire container into the trash without even looking at it. In shock, I asked her, "What are you doing?" She then explained that she had devised a new system. If she tells me 3 times that I can eat her leftovers because she doesn't intend to have them, she will discard them before they spoil. According to her, this was the 4th time I had reminded her about the leftovers, which triggered the disposal. I fell silent, trying to process the fact that she made this decision without discussing it with me. Eventually, I told her that she could have informed me that she was going to throw them away and I would have eaten them. She firmly believes that the statute of limitations had expired since she had already told me 3 times that I could have them, and she believed that she had the right to do as she pleased with them. If I had known she was going to throw them away instead of eating them herself, I would have eaten them, as I genuinely didn't mind her having them. I just feel like she hasn't truly listened to or disregarded my feelings and upbringing regarding food. Since then, I've told her to do as she pleases, and we haven't really talked since. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your wife has made her position on leftovers very clear, and you don't seem to be able to adapt to that. Let me recap. First, she basically gave you a free pass to eat her leftovers whenever you want because she, by default, doesn't want them. You weren't comfortable with that setup, though it doesn't sound like there was ever a situation where you ate her leftovers and she got mad about it. So you keep reminding her about the leftovers that she has basically said she doesn't want. She got sick of this and threw out the food. I understand that that's wasteful and upsetting to you, but you were driving her crazy and she snapped. She's also now given you clear expectations for the new system so that you both don't have to keep getting upset over this all the time. Also, just to cement you being the jerk, you say, "If I had known she had tossed them instead of eating them, I truly would have eaten them myself." You're the jerk. You need to seek therapy. I also grew up in a really poverty-struck family. We were homeless multiple times, on state assistance, went to food banks, you name it, we did it. I also cannot stand leftovers because of this. Unless I purposely buy something I know I'm going to eat as leftovers or that I'm meal prepping, I cannot do it. I'm steady, but I'm not well off, so I'm super careful, but admit I do toss more food than I care to admit. The reason I vote this way is because if you remind her 3 times and she tells you each time to eat it, and you then continue to just remind her, it feels more like you're shaming her, and instead of eating them first, second, or third time she told you to, then yeah, I don't blame her for tossing it. She's also your wife, not your kid. She doesn't need your permission to do anything. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Today I learned that some people don't eat leftovers. I'm just not sure what this world's coming to anymore.
First world problems, Karen. First world problems. I keep meeting my birth mom, but she doesn't know it's me. She had me when she was 14, and I, 24, male, was given up for adoption. My parents told me about her growing up. I still have the letter she wrote me, and then she asked if they could give it to me. It's crazy reading it sometimes and knowing it was a literal kid who wrote it, saying she's sorry that she couldn't be my mommy, but she hopes I'm okay. She was open to having contact, but we moved from my dad's job when I was 11, and then it seemed impossible to find her. But luckily, I did. She's working at this small restaurant, and I keep going, but she doesn't know it's me. We talk sometimes, and she seems like a nice lady. Sometimes when she says something like, "Do you want a refill, honey?" or uses another term like that, I want to tell her. I don't know why it makes me nervous. We talk sometimes, and she seems really genuine. If it's not super busy, she's more open to talking about random stuff. I literally drive 2 hours to come eat at this place just to see her, and it's like she knows me already because I'm there once or 2 times a week for the past 3 months, so she always says hi with a big smile. But man, if she only knew. Update. Well, I did it. I told her. And yeah, it was pretty heavy. My heart was even beating fast. I kept trying to think how to tell her. Many of the commenters on my last post here mentioned writing her a letter just how she wrote a letter for me. Originally, that was the plan, but for me, it felt like I needed to say it. Oh, really quick, I want to say thanks to everyone for your love and support, mostly to all the birth parents out there who shared their stories with me. That's what really helped me push to have the courage to confront her. It meant so much, so thanks. Everything happened the day before yesterday, by the way. I did wait for her to be done with her shift, and that was when they were closing the restaurant already, and waiting in the parking lot. We said hi when she saw me first, but then I told her there was something serious that she needed to know. First, I told her sorry for keeping it from her this long. She didn't react until I actually pulled out her letter, and she started bawling from here, like screaming and crying at the same time, and I didn't even have to finish the whole "I'm your son" speech. She just saw it and knew. It was crazy. Next thing I know, she's hugging me instantly, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. Of course it is, and we're just there hugging each other and crying in the parking lot. It hit her hard though. Her legs gave out for a second, so I had to actually hold her up while she's still hugging me for a minute. What really got me was her saying to look at how big I got. Also, hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant up. She wouldn't take no for an answer. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie, and talked. So much stuff that we talked about. She told me the second time I came to the restaurant, she got a feeling, but for her it was hard to believe it was me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down. Because she told me for years after I was adopted, she saw kids that would be my age and used to think they were me. Then she would be crying in public. It really messed with her mind a lot and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she saw me, getting her hopes up like that. She says I look so much like my biological dad when he was younger though. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other in case I ever reached out to one of them, so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have hope about finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for the future scenario. She told me about how they wanted to keep me, especially my biological dad. He didn't want me to be adopted, but he knew they had to because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get over it is what she told me. That's why he didn't leave anything, because he didn't want to believe he might not see me again. We talked for hours until almost 2 in the morning. They closed at 11. She just wanted to know everything about me, but her main thing was, am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her thank you for helping to give me this life. We both cried again. She cried the most. Everything was emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy, but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday, she was hoping I would find her. That's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought maybe I resented her, wasn't told that I had been adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault, and I did right going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile, it made me emotional sometimes. Makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger your whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She asked me if we could have dinner soon to keep talking. And if at some point in the future, if I'm interested to come over to her house so I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged numbers. After I left, she sent me a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift that she didn't even know if it would ever come. My girlfriend came over and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, by the way. These were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we get to open up to each other. Update. Lots of you asked to let you know how it goes meeting my biological dad, and to say it was emotional is an understatement. I've been feeling so many things since this all happened. We met up a few days ago. Was originally supposed to be almost 2 weeks ago, but things kept coming up. Work, then I got sick for days, but we made it happen. To be honest, this was more nervous for me because I didn't know anything about him. With my biological mom, it was different because I watched her from far and got to know her a little before it came out. I asked my biological mom if she could be there too, just because she knows him better, so it was the two of us waiting for him at this park. He was already crying before we even got to him. This guy is strong too, so he pulled me in for the biggest bear hug and crying. He told me he wants me to know that they loved me so much and he loves me. I lost count how many times he'd come back in for one more hug. This definitely got to him, and he kept saying, "Thank you, God," a few times. Looking at my face, the feelings, man, the feelings. We had so many of them. Hearing him tell me how much they love me, even back then. It meant so much for me to hear that, and not gonna lie, that had me holding him tight too. I'm sure everyone at the park thought it was weird seeing 3 people crying together. My biological dad said he cried so many times just driving over here, he didn't think he had any more tears until he saw us. When we were all sitting down, it hit me that my biological mom was not lying when she said we look alike. Obviously he's older, but still, wow, the similarities. He brought gifts too, which was a surprise. It was really nice. He told me I don't have to keep them if I don't want it, but he felt weird not coming with anything, and he's wanted to give this to me for a long time. One was a teddy bear holding a picture frame of him at the hospital holding me. He was 15 years old. It's still crazy to realize that. And then the other thing was a journal. The journal was stuff he said he started writing to me years after I was adopted. He was in therapy, and that helped him to cope, thinking he would give them to me one day. His way of still feeling connected to me. I haven't read anything yet, but some of the pages were his thoughts, and like if he's talking to me. How he felt when they found out she was pregnant, then the adoption, everything going on in his mind when he first got to hold me as a baby. I didn't even know he was at the hospital too. It was not what I was expecting. It really got me. I read some more of what he wrote last night that really got me crying. I'm sad to think how much this affected them emotionally for years. Also, I think it's pretty sweet he wanted to write this for me. We talked about his own life, which was pretty hard, his struggles with home life, and the feelings he had about giving me up. Then he wanted to know everything about me, basically with the same questions my biological mom had. I made sure they knew they made the right decision, because my life was pretty great. He looked like he wanted to cry when he knew that, because that's all they had hoped for, and it was something he always wondered about for years. My biological mom left a bit after we were more comfortable so we could talk more in private, and so it didn't feel too awkward between us. From there, he told me stories about how he met my biological mom. Sometimes he'd point out stuff he had noticed about me that reminds him of her, or that we have similar likes. Example, I love eating mangoes. I can eat them all day, and that's what I bought when we bought snacks at the park. He told me my biological mom was obsessed with mangoes, even before she got pregnant, and while pregnant, she craved them even more. Just cool info to know, even if it's random stuff. It's still stuff we have in common, and we both have lots. We both like hiking, playing pool. He was a swimmer in college, and I was on a swim team in high school. We both love rock music, especially 90s. My biological dad was really open about sharing everything. Like he really was getting ready for this meeting. He hoped it would happen, and he prayed every day to see me again because he had so many things he wanted to tell me. Overall, really good first meeting. I'm glad it went well. He's open to the idea of meeting my parents. After I told them about all this, because they definitely want to meet my biological parents again if I'm comfortable with that. Obviously, if my biological parents are too. Let's see what happens. I don't know how it's gonna feel for me. They met each other before I was ever even born, but I never had them at the same place, so that'll be interesting. Me and my parents met up yesterday to have breakfast so I could tell them everything. My mom was so happy how it went. She actually cried too when I was telling them about both of their reactions. My dad was proud because he knew how hard it was the months after finding my biological mom and not really wanting to make contact yet. I'm really happy to have their support because it's hard not to feel guilty about wanting to know more about my biological parents. They gave me a really good life, so for a while, it's felt like maybe to them I'm showing them that it wasn't good enough for me and I'd rather have my biological parents. But they told me many times that they want me to do this for me and they know how much I love them, and I really do. Finding them and meeting them was hard, but it was so worth it to me, and seeing their reactions made it feel even more worth it. Still can't believe it sometimes.
Is it just me or is somebody cutting onions in here? Oy.
I'm leaving my wife tomorrow, and I couldn't be happier. I'm 45 male, and my wife, 44 female, have been married for 10 years. We dated for 6 before that, and I got a lot of pressure to get married from my parents, her. Something in my gut said that this wasn't right. I called it cold feet and did my best to ignore it. we got married. Pretty much the moment the ink was dry on her marriage license, things went south. On our honeymoon, she did nothing but complain I hadn't booked a nicer hotel. In the following months, she wanted a new apartment, a new car, gifts, jewelry, handbags. It was never enough. It's like the moment she got the ring, it stopped being about me and became about what I could give her. I'm a doctor. I make good money. Not good enough to support the kind of lifestyle she wants, though. We don't hook up anymore. We don't laugh. We don't talk about anything but money. We have no kids. She said she wanted them before marriage, then changed her mind. Our home looks like a showroom. There's no warmth or joy or even comfort here. I hate it. I can't stand her. I'm a 45-year-old physician, and I have barely enough savings to sustain us for 3 months. I want to retire someday. I want to enjoy my life. I rented a cool apartment across town in a less desirable neighborhood, and there's a stack of IKEA furniture waiting for me to set it up there. The lease is up on the Mercedes my wife pushed me to lease next month, and I will be replacing it with a used Prius. I'm starting therapy next week. I have a divorce attorney who has assured me that the prenup we signed before marriage means I won't have to pay alimony. I hope to leave the higher-paying job that my wife insisted I take for something with less hours sometime in the next year. I'm going to ask out the pretty barista who flirts with me every morning. I'm telling her first thing tomorrow. I'm expecting her to cry and beg and demand we try therapy. I don't want any of that. This was never right, and I'm only sorry it took me so long to realize it. I'm sorry I've wasted so much of my life being married to a woman because I thought it was the right thing. I'm so excited. Update. First of all, wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up. I really was getting it off my chest and expected a few good luck comments and not much more. I know a lot of people were asking for an update, so here it goes. Usually when I wake up, I go for a run or a bike ride. While I'm gone, my wife gets up, gets dressed, gets a smoothie going, whatever. This morning, I paced the kitchen, rehearsing what I had to tell her over and over again. When she finally came down, I felt oddly calm. I wasn't expecting to be panicked exactly, but apprehensive at least. I told her I needed to speak with her. She gave me an uh-huh and didn't look up from the coffee machine. Then I just came out with it. I told her I was leaving and that I wanted a divorce, that we hadn't been happy in a long time, and I felt as though she didn't care about me or my emotional needs. Pretty much instantly, the gaslighting began. She cried that I never get her flowers anymore, that I don't do enough to support her, that I don't care if she's happy. I brought up the fact that I suggested therapy over a year ago and she agreed, but then made excuse after excuse not to go. I brought up the time she completely ignored the budget we worked on. I told her how it made me feel when she dismissed me when I tried to tell her how I was feeling. The crying escalated then, along with begging for a chance to make this right, to go to therapy, that she would be better. It went like I thought it would go, and I felt absolutely nothing. I don't care anymore. Whatever I once felt for her is just gone, and she might as well have been a second cousin sobbing about her marriage for all the connection I felt to it. Eventually, I just got fed up and walked out. She's been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, which range from angry to begging to threatening. I started getting calls from her mother, and mine too, by the end of the day. I spoke briefly to my mother and calmly explained that I was sorry she didn't hear it from me, but my wife was ruining me financially and emotionally, and I couldn't do it anymore. She was surprisingly supportive. I'm currently in my new apartment. I unrolled the mattress in a box and went to Walmart for my sheets. I ate Thai takeout for dinner at the kitchen counter and watched a bit of Netflix on my computer. I have everything I need for the next few days. My wife is getting served tomorrow. I keep expecting the sadness to set in, but it hasn't. I feel like 1,000 pounds are off my shoulders, and suddenly my future is full of possibilities. I'm going to travel. I'm going to try new restaurants. I'm going to take a job that actually makes me happy and that I'm proud of instead of being rich. Much to the internet's chagrin, I will ask out the barista because despite unpopular opinion, she's both age appropriate, it's her family's business, and I do have the interpersonal skills to recognize the difference between customer service and actual connection. Cheers, everyone. I'm going to have a beer and then take a walk around my new neighborhood. All right, folks. I've gotten a lot of comments begging me to not ask out the barista as it's her job to be nice to me. I didn't really get into the relationship I have with her because I didn't think it was relevant to the divorce, but here goes. I met her about a year ago. She's 30. I don't usually wear a wedding ring because my job requires me to scrub regularly. She actually asked me out, invited me to a food truck festival in town a few months into knowing each other. I said I was married and she was embarrassed. Since then, we've had a bit of a running joke where she asks me, "So, still married?" My current plan is to reply, "Not for long," and see what happens. I appreciate the internet's apprehension. In truth, I would probably say the same thing if I didn't know the backstory. But I promise, I'm not a creep. You want to know where I'm at all times? Your wish is my command. This happened about 8 years ago, just 1 year into my first job and paid internship and clerking gig. I don't know what to call it. The firm that I worked for had a part-time program for law students so they could work and gain experience while in school. Very common in my country. I loved my job. I was very grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow, and I really enjoyed the work I performed. The thing was, I had classes both in the morning and the afternoon and at night, and my school was at a different side of the city, about 8 miles away, that could turn into hours of traffic during rush hour in a city with 8 million inhabitants. So my days looked pretty hectic, as something like this. 5:30 to 7, get ready and drive to school. 7 to 9, class. 9 to 10, drive to work. 10 to 1700, work. 1700 to 1800, drive to school. 1800 to 2200, classes. Then I would try to study for 1 hour after class, and I would often eat while driving. During my first year in the program, I had more than proved myself and earned my place. I was that 19 to 20-year-old idiot, type A overachiever that knew no boundaries. I had worked weekends, pulled all-nighters. Literally, I would leave school at 10 p.m., go back to work, worked full-time in the summers without more pay, anything I had to do to keep the associates happy so they'd keep teaching me. As I was wrapping up my first anniversary there, the perfect storm of awful rolled around. On the academic front, I started a new semester, and twice a week in the mornings, I had a teacher who was awesome but would finish class 20 to 30 minutes late. On the work front, a new partner joined the firm. Let's call him Mr. Jerk for short, and kind of took over as unofficial managing partner. He was the typical old-fashioned lawyer that should be extinct by now. He could barely use Microsoft Word to type a contract and would pass out at the sight of an Excel sheet. He had this weird obsession with punctuality while simultaneously being late to everything. Plus, he moronically believed that by having a bunch of people warming up chairs, he would magically make money. So instead of investing time on client development, he would just spend endless time and effort on bullying everyone around the office. To make matters worse, since other people spoke highly of me, he decided to pay special attention to me. Unsurprisingly, shortly after Jerk joined, the firm started struggling. Now, he could have tried to get new clients, send quotes by the deadline, and show up to meetings on time. But no. Of course the firm was doing poorly because us clerks did not spend enough time warming up the chairs. So he became obsessed with us getting there by 10 a.m., especially me. The issue was that I could not get there by 10 because my teacher finished class late and there was no way I could drive across the city in rush hour in 30 minutes. So Jerk called a meeting with all the clerks and yelled at me in front of everyone because I was always late. More like 2 times a week, but whatever. The fact that I'd gotten permission from the program committee did not matter. The fact that I was working 6 or 7 hours every day while I only had to work 5 did not matter. The fact that I would work weekends and late nights did not matter. I tried to explain, but he kept yelling at me and would not let me talk. Having had enough, I left the conference room straight into the office of every member of the clerk program committee, 1 junior associate, 1 senior associate, and 1 partner, to say the same speech. I'm late because I have class. I've proven my commitment to the firm, but my education is important too. If 30 minutes late twice a week is too big of an issue, feel free to fire me, but I'm not leaving my class early. Then I went to my desk to do my work. I guess the committee informed other partners, and word got around of what was going on. Small firm. Because as I was getting ready to leave for school, Jerk came fuming to my desk and told me, "I know you're lying. From now on, I want to know where you are at all times. And if I catch that you were slacking off or lying, you're fired, and I will make sure no one will ever hire you." So, cue malicious compliance. The next day I woke up extra early, 5 a.m. sharp, took a time-stamped photo and sent it both to his email and phone, since I couldn't risk him not getting it and not knowing where I was at. I sent a time-stamped photo every 5 minutes, captioning what I was doing like it was my own personal social media platform of 1 follower. The cherry on top was that my teacher had worked with Jerk in the past and obviously did not like him very much. So he let me take photos during class and diligently sent them to Jerk. I even went so far as taking a photo of the toilet door with the text, "Going to the bathroom," and then of flushing the toilet. All done. While driving, since traffic was really slow, I would send a photo and include how much I had moved during that time. Sometimes it was something absurd like 100 feet. As soon as I sent a photo of me at my desk, he shows up saying that he got the point and I could stop. A couple weeks later, he simply stopped bugging people and started working from home or locking himself up in his office. My guess is I was not the only one to complain, and the other partner realized how dangerous he could be for the firm and asked him to back off. Random lady thinks my hearing aids are AirPods. Oh my gosh, I have one. Never did think I'd have a story for this sub. Wow, okay, I'm still in a state of rage. So I just got home from good old Mart of Walls. I knew pretty much what I wanted, so I didn't bother with a cart. Of course, I get distracted, and I end up in the kitchen cutlery aisles, and I'm idly looking at things and putting them back on the shelves. I guess that made me look like a worker? I don't know how. I'm wearing a dress, whatever. So I'm hard of hearing. I wear hearing aids. They're rose gold and awesome. Cool tech in my ears. Since I'm shopping, I have no reason to think someone would be needing my attention, but this entitled mom was trying to get my attention. I see this woman and she says, "Finally, I've been chasing you down the aisles." I'm thinking I must have something loose or I dropped something. That she thought I was a worker just did not occur to me. "You really shouldn't wear those things while you're working." She's out of breath. Her little toddler is babbling away, oblivious. I'm still clueless. Where what? The AirPods! Fun fact, as someone who is hard of hearing, I mishear things, and it took me forever to understand what she said. I thought she said, "their pods." Whose pods? Your pods. What pods? I'm looking down at my dress, thinking something had latched onto my dress. As I put my head down, this crazy Karen grabbed my left hearing aid. It's squealing away and protesting, and I'm in such a state of shock. My aids are a part of me. I went from baffled to pure rage in a split second. "You give that back now!" I clawed at my hearing aid, and I wrestled it back from her. I'm trembling at this point. "Don't touch me!" Entitled mom's kid starts crying from the sudden energy change.
Look what you did. I was just saying you shouldn't wear those while you're working.
I start walking away from her. "Get away from me. If you come near me, I'll call the police and have you arrested for assault."
What? Assault? But
I growled at her. Yes, growled. And I walked away to find a store manager to tell them they had a customer who just tried taking one of my hearing aids. But then I left. I was too outraged to get back to my lackadaisical meandering. Charged me an extra month and don't want to return my deposit? The contract of the apartment I've been living in for the past year recently ended. I had, however, forgotten of the 60 days written move-out notice until I was reminded by management 10 days before I turned in my notice. Though it is specified in the contract and it is my responsibility as a tenant to maintain them, I was still livid by the fact that they didn't have the courtesy to remind me all the 3 times they contacted me about renewing my contract and me verbally declining. All 3 times they said they'd taken note of it, and me being the fool that I am, I believed them. Since I did not provide the 60 days notice before moving out in writing, I was forced to pay an extra month of rent that, regardless of my moaning and crying, was not waived. Throughout my panic, they kept reminding me that it was in the contract and that they couldn't do anything. Since I had to pay an extra month, I decided I was going to do everything in my power to get my deposit back, cueing the malicious compliance. I went through the entire contract. The contract specified that I was allowed to be present during the inspection as long as I provided a written notice in advance, no date specified, and that I had the right to any information extracted from the inspection. The contract also specified that the apartment has to be left in the same condition it was received, and that I was responsible for any cleaning fees from services they'd have to use. Before I actually start the juicy part of the story, I have to mention that I took detailed pictures and videos of the apartment when I moved in. Unfortunately, mine was incredibly dirty, even food in the carpets. I requested it to be cleaned, but they never came by and did anything, so I took care of it since I'm terrified of confrontation. But I still saved and recorded everything that was not okay, regardless of how mild it was. The day I read the contract, I emailed them requesting to be present during the inspection and that I wanted a copy of everything obtained from that inspection to compare with my notes. They didn't respond that day, so I took it upon myself to email them every day for the next 4 days until they got back to me with the following reply. Per the rental agreement move-out inspection, you may be present at move-out inspection if you notify us in advance in writing of your request. OP, you turned your keys into the Dropbox on 5/30/22 and never requested a walkthrough. The walkthrough inspection was already completed this morning. So I obviously forwarded all my previous emails asking if those were not considered in writing. Then they offered to redo the inspection with me present, but I was out of town, so I requested all the data they obtained from it instead, to which they agreed. To this day, I have not received anything from the inspection, but I did find out that they didn't actually do it until 3 days after they started. They did on that email via the bill they sent charging me cleaning fees and no deposit back. I was like, okay, since you're not going to send me what I asked for, I'm going to send you what I have. I highlighted the part where they lied to me about the inspection date, attached pictures of how I received the apartment compared to how I left it, very clean, and I made sure to include their timestamps. Advised that, per the contract, there is no reason for them to charge me cleaning fees since it was in better condition than received. I also demanded my deposit back and sent them receipts of all products I used to clean the apartment, including a new vacuum, so they could refund me at their earliest convenience or I'd contact corporate directly. I also advised that I'd send them all the communication we had ever had, the lies they told me, and the rest of the video and images I have of the apartment. I honestly have no idea if I would have gotten anywhere contacting corporate, but it doesn't matter because within 3 days, I got my deposit back and got refunded for everything I spent on cleaning supplies. I did leave a review in every site I could find, but the Google one got removed for some reason.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.